So today on June 1st, 2026, it's official. Bank of Uganda has fully and finally approved ABSA Bank Uganda Limited to acquire the wealth and retail business of Standard Chartered Bank Uganda. The Bank of Uganda has approved the full acquisition of the wealth and retail business of Standard Chartered Bank Uganda. Remember, back in 2024, Standard Chartered Group, the UK entity, announced its exit of the wealth and retail business from Uganda and Zambia and a few other African countries. And October last year, in October 2025, there was a memorandum of understanding that was signed between ABSA Bank Uganda Limited and Standard Chartered Bank Uganda, pending regulatory approval. And the question was, when will this happen? And finally, today on June 1st, which is a good day from a financial perspective, that Bank of Uganda has fully announced. So the integration will almost start potentially in the next 1 or 2 months. But we thought there are a few things we should look at from the banking sector perspective. Such mergers and acquisitions, although this was a sale, where the anticipation was potentially when they first announced, Standard Chartered Bank first announced that they might exit, we thought a new player might come into play, especially when we remember that Access Bank PLC, the Nigerian bank, had just acquired the Standard Chartered wealth and retail business in Tanzania. So we thought also this year, this time around in Uganda, it's going to be such an acquisition of an outside player to take on that business. The surprise was in October when we saw the board member, the board chair, the Honorable Maria Chiwanuka, sitting with the team from ABSA to announce the intention for ABSA Bank Uganda Limited to acquire the Standard Chartered Bank wealth and retail business. Now, to take a step back, Standard Chartered Bank is going to stay in Uganda, but it's going to concentrate so much on its corporate business, which by so many measures, a few of the things they have been doing are going to stay in, but the operations are going to remain. That means they're not going to be serving the retail customers. For those of you who have been having your bank accounts in Uganda, I've seen a few commentaries already from some of the people who have been holding bank accounts in Standard Chartered Bank, and I've already started saying, you know what, the news are finally here, and it still hurts because to the retail, especially the corporate customer, Standard Chartered Bank has been one of the very best for them. They talk about their digital first approach, their customer care, their internet banking, their internet banking, mobile banking, everything. When you find a Standard Chartered customer, when they talk about the bank and the relationship they've had with their bank, it has been one of the very best to them. So now they are being shifted to one of the other high-end corporate other bank, which by very many measures to some of us who bank with ABSA Bank Uganda, it's also an amazing bank. I have no problems or quarrels with it. The customer care is absolutely good. They have a much bigger and better network of branches and responsiveness. So there are a few things which you're going to pay attention to. But I want us to look at this in threefold. The first fold is in the asset concentration, the new ABSA Bank Uganda Limited and its potential. 2, the limitations that might be ahead of it. And 3, what it means for you who holds a bank in ABSA Bank Uganda. The first one is the potential. Now, as of 2025, ABSA Bank Uganda Limited had a total asset base of 7 trillion Ugandan shillings. That puts it as the third biggest bank. 7 trillion. Ahead of it is Stanbic Bank Uganda with close to 11 trillion, almost going to 12. The second there is Centenary Bank, which Centenary Bank comes in at total assets for Centenary Bank was at around 8.6, So ABSA was the third before they are, at least as of 2025. Now, all of a sudden, it's about to acquire one of the biggest, because Standard Chartered Bank has been in the top 7. We do not have the full financial set of ABSA Bank, at least of Standard Chartered Bank when I was doing this report, and we cannot easily segregate the corporate business to the wealth and retail business from a total asset base. I'll tell you why. One, Standard Chartered Bank the last few years has been going so hard on its wealth, on its corporate business and corporate lending, especially to the government of Uganda, funding infrastructure projects and everything. And such total assets will retain with the corporate business, because that's corporate business. Two, part of what forms the total assets are what you do call the investments in the treasury bonds by the bank itself for its core capital. That is also going to remain with the ABSA, with the Standard Chartered Bank. But there is a portion of the total assets of Standard Chartered Bank that is going to move to ABSA Bank Uganda. Now, my estimation is, however much this bank has been so much corporate and wealth and retail business, and wealth and retail business means all retail customers, individuals, and all its companies that own just bank accounts for current accounts and for savings accounts, then investors who own CSDs who use Standard Chartered Bank Uganda as your settlement account, all of you are going to be shipped to ABSA Bank Uganda. No discussions, no quorum about that. So my anticipation is ABSA Bank Uganda Limited is going to acquire, at least by my estimate, around 2 trillion, or a minimum of the total of the assets of Standard Chartered Bank as it was by December 31st, 2025. Which all of a sudden, this consolidation, even if it's just 2 trillion, but it can be more, because also Standard Chartered Bank has been a big bank, has been one of the very best banks, and it has had its high niche clientele that have been loyal to them. I know so many of my peers who have been banking with Standard Chartered Bank for the last potentially 10, 15 years. And if it wasn't because of this move, they were not about to move. Even others have ended up opening a few other bank accounts with other banks. Still, ABSA Standard Chartered Bank has been their absolute number one go-to bank because of the measures I've talked about. So ABSA Bank is about to acquire such a loyal, dedicated clientele that also has a lot of wiseacring, that also are picky in their desires and services they are looking for. But if you serve them, they will be with you. They're not going to look around. They are loyal to the services that you will provide to them. That's what ABSA Bank is about to acquire. People who have been with ABSA, with Standard Chartered Bank for 10, 15, 20 years. So ABSA Bank, after the post acquisition, you expect ABSA Bank to be the number 2 bank in Uganda. I do not see this consolidation to overtake Stanbic Bank Uganda, but I see it overtaking ABSA Centenary Bank Uganda, at least in the immediate short term. The conversation changes when it becomes after the consolidation and the merger. Then what happens in retention of those clientele and the loan books and the customers to still be banking with ABSA Bank Uganda. And that brings us to the second position, the post-merger. What the picture might look like. The only way to understand what the picture might look like, you have to to take a step back and understand. ABSA Bank Uganda, the former Barclays, it serves in a similar niche as Standard Chartered Bank, targeting a middle class kind of clientele. So that means someone who went for Standard Chartered Bank knew that ABSA was there. They had the reason to choose Standard Chartered Bank, and they have been loyal with Standard Chartered Bank for all these years. The conversation then becomes, what is going to make them stay with ABSA with ABSA post-acquisition, what will make them stay? Right? But also, the most important perspective is to look at the past. What has ever happened? And the closest I can think of is DFCU. Now, let me tell you about DFCU. I love DFCU. It's potentially... I love DFCU as a bank for reasons best known to me, which I'm not going to go through them today. But let me give you perspective. In 2016, DFCU was one of the biggest banks in Uganda, potentially top 5, top 6. Crane Bank was among the top 5, top 6. Then Crane Bank got certain issues. We remember that saga? That it was then Bank of Uganda, they then Director Supervision put it under receivership and supervision, which then a few months later ended up being acquired. Certain assets and liabilities were acquired by DFCU by 2017. Why am I talking about DFCU? Because in December 2016, DFCU's total assets, DFCU before the acquisition of the assets and liabilities of Crane Bank, were 1.7 trillion in 2016. By 2017, the total assets of DFCU had almost doubled to 3 trillion. Almost 40% increase by just an acquisition of the assets and liabilities, certain liabilities of Crane Bank. Many of the loans that were, especially commercial loans that DFCU had, Crane Bank had, shifted to DFCU. And overnight, DFCU became number 2. Now, the acquisition of Crane Bank by DFCU had certain questionable measures at the time, and there was so much changes in leadership from Mr. Juma to Mr. Katamba, then to the current MD, who is doing an amazing job. However, the board has not changed. There's been a little bit of changes, but there were certain questions. Some of those questions we are yet to get certain answers for, especially when you look at them retrospectively. But the point here is, overnight, in one single year, because of the acquisition, DFCU moved from top 5 to top number 2. From a 1.7 trillion in assets to 3 trillion in assets. DFCU moved from a network branch of, I think it was around 40 to almost 80, and customers were very many. Then the wars started. Between 2017 to 2020, DFCU barely grew in its assets. That means the people, the assets they acquired, somehow some were constrained them. And so many of the customers, not so many, but especially the corporate customers, ended up shifting their moves, their accounts, and who had been for Crane Bank, moved to other banks. So the acquisition, it's not always 1 plus 1. Sometimes it can be 1 plus 1 for the short to immediate term. Then clients be like, you know what, this is not what I'm looking for. They start looking out for something different. How will ABSA Bank manage that? How will ABSA Bank manage to make sure it retains those loyal and dedicated customers it's paying a good price for to acquire them from Standard Chartered Bank? You know, when you look at DFCU crossed the 3 trillion total assets in 2017. By 2024, it was still at 3.4 trillion in total assets. What does that tell you? That there was a little bit of stunted growth. Actually, If I'm to even give you a little bit of a better measure, the profits, total profits, where is it? Give me a second. Let me look for it. I can use even the loans and receivable. Let me use even the loans and receivable. You know, DFCU had a total loans before acquisition in 2016 of 837 billion Ugandan shillings. Post acquisition, its total loans increased to 1.4 trillion, 600 billion by just acquisition of the Crane Bankers, selected assets and some liabilities. And between 2017 to 2022, their loan book barely grew. Actually, in that period, we remember so many times that DFC was trying so much to win it off of some bad debts that they acquired from the Crane Bank. So the acquisition is never one-to-one. It's never one-to-one. Then let's talk about performance. In 2016, DFCU, before the acquisition of Crane Bank, or before the acquisition of certain assets of Crane Bank, they never acquired the full Crane Bank, DFCU made profits of 45 billion. It was doing very well. In 2016, it got total profits of 106 billion. 100 billion. So that means overnight, in one single year, they doubled their profit after tax. Then the troubles began. Retention. And this is the lesson that ABSA Bank must learn. The retention. I know the circumstances are different. This is a voluntary sale. The other one was a forced swallowing. You know? In 2018, DFCU's total profits after tax reduced from 100 billion to 60 billion. Then they stayed within that range. By 2020, they were just making around 24 billion. Because the impairment provision from the total loans they had acquired from Crane Bank had become significant. At one point in 2021, before they shipped Mr. Katamba off, DFC was making 90 billion. It had dropped from the top 5 bank that was shining and everything to almost a top 10. Right now, it's starting to get its groove back. This year in 2025, DFCU made close to 75 billion. But in 2016, they were at 45 billion. That potential, if DFCU retained and remained where it was and continued its organic growth, retained its management at the time without swallowing what ended up becoming a toxic swallowing of the certain assets of Crane Bank, cases are still in courts in London. The last time I think I read they were still in arbitrage. DFC would maybe potentially be better than what it is. It was a competing bank. It was a very good bank. It was good for trade. It was good for traders. When you go downtown, it was competing with Crane Bank. But that acquisition of Crane Bank didn't go as planned. So it wasn't a synergy of one-to-one. It was one-to-one in the immediate term, but after that it wasn't. So for ABSA Bank, it must make sure it sees that its acquisition of Crane Bank, its acquisition of Standard Chartered Bankers, wealth and retail business doesn't easily. You want to take advantage of that. You are getting one of the best loyal customers from Standard Chartered Bank. But I remember I said some of those customers, especially the retail clients, are very picky. They are wiseacres. They know what they want. They are the high-end, medium-income kind of clientels that are willing to pay an extra charge just to get a very good service in this day and age. So we shall see how that will be. Then the third element is on investors, especially those who invest in the treasury bonds. So of course, remember we always say that you open up, when you buy treasury bonds, you are buying them from Bank of Uganda. The CSD you open up is housed in Bank of Uganda. So that means when you buy treasury bonds, your bank is just a settlement bank. Standard Chartered Bank was your settlement bank. Your bank where they pay your money or where they take your money off when you are buying a treasury bond. All that is going to shift to ABSA Bank Uganda Limited. And ABSA Bank, the good thing right now, even when you are buying treasury bonds, especially from the primary market, you do it paperless. So you're going to come to the world of paperless when you're buying treasury bonds. So your total assets, your treasury bonds will not be touched. Your CSD number is going to remain the same because that is in a Bank of Uganda. Your settlement bank is the one which is going to change from Standard Chartered Bank to ABSA Bank because you're going to be allocated a new bank account in ABSA Bank Uganda, which will match with everything of yours. The same way your loans, if you had a loan with Standard Chartered Bank, now that loan with the same terms and conditions are going to be moved to ABSA Bank Uganda. Sometimes what we end up also seeing is, especially for the dedicated high-end clients who have relationship officers and relationship managers, all those, they end up moving them holistically from the acquired bank to the acquiring bank. So the familiarity, at least to the short to medium term, is going to be that. From unemployment perspective, I cannot comment about that, but I know the guys at the top at ABSA Bank, I know they have a plan for it. The managing director, David Wandera, is doing an incredible job, and his team. The board chairman, Keith Karejila, Keith, and the job he is doing post his retirement from CMA, it's an incredible job. That transition, it's a transition which you should study about, and the performance of ABSA Bank Uganda Limited under the stewardship of David Wandera and Keith Karejila has been commendable. It would have been more commendable, Mr. Keith, if the bank was even listed on the stock exchange. That will benefit from such a magnanimous merger of some of the two biggest banks, however much the other one is going to be a scooped out portion of the bank. Now, there is one more point I'm going to leave out without commenting on it until I get further information. Many of the people who have been investing with Standard Chartered Bank products, especially the Shilingi account, Standard Chartered Shilingi, which corners directed to your Sanlam. Now, we are yet to get certain information, and I cannot comment on that because I'm yet to understand, is that arrangement, is it under the corporate banking arrangement, or is it under the wealth and retail arrangement? If it's under the wealth and retail arrangement, that means that arrangement will move to ABSA Bank Uganda Limited. But if it's under the corporate banking arrangement, then it will stay with Standard Chartered Bank. Although, my anticipation is I don't think it's under the corporate arrangement, because if it stays with Standard Chartered Bank Uganda, it means I can retain an account with Standard Chartered, because people have been funding those investments directly from their account. So we do not know about that. But as soon as we get more information, please subscribe, like, and share. This is the platform for you to be on to understand what's going on. We're going to have to be doing this a little bit more often.